Well, I think I'm right now the only one in here, but that's okay because I enjoy playing with myself. Well, I think I'm right now the only one in here, but that's okay. I better I better mute that before I get sick of my own voice. You were my sunrise, I your star. We'd mock the moon and laugh at the sun. One, our young years had outrun them both. I guess I should start by doing this. I'm gonna do that. Good thing there's no one on this stream, or I would be making a right butthole of myself right now. I like buttholes, but I'm not sure if I like this. Just for fun, let's see what's going on in the news right now. Just go to Wikipedia. A mining dam has collapsed in Brumadinho, Brazil, leaving more than 50 people dead and hundreds others missing. More than 60 people are killed in flooding across South Sulawesi, Indonesia. South Sulawesi, Indonesia. More than 100 Afghan National Security Forces members are reportedly killed in an attack on a military compound in Maidan Shar. Oh, well, that's not good news. 10 Chadian United Nations peacekeepers are killed in an attack by Al Qaeda in Mali in apparent retaliation for the normalization of diplomatic relations between Chad and Israel. Ah, darn that Chad. Just sticking his nose where it doesn't belong. That is kind of interesting. I didn't realize that Al Qaeda was still attacking places. Perhaps that's uh, perhaps that's a bit of ignorance on my part. Okay, on this day, January 28th, in 1547, 9-year-old Edward VI became the first Protestant ruler of England. Let's see what happened exactly. Edward was born on the 12th of October, 1537, in his mother's room inside Middlesex. He was the son of King Henry VIII by his third wife, Jane Seymour. Throughout the realm, the people greeted the birth of a male heir whom we hungered for so long with joy and relief. Te Deums were sung in churches, bonfires lit, and there was shot at the tower that night above 200 guns. I have no idea what any of that means. Queen Jane, appearing to recover quickly from the birth, sent out personally signed letters announcing the birth of a prince conceived in most lawful matrimony between my lord, the king's majesty, and us. The queen, however, fell ill on the 23rd of October from presumed postnatal complications and died the following night. King Henry VIII wrote to Francis I of France that divine providence hath mingled my joy with bitterness of the death of her who brought me this happiness. 9 years old. Well, I seem to be tripping over my own words even earlier than usual, so I'm going to look up a few tongue twisters and see if I don't do a little better than normal. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan. I'm just going to go to the first result here from Ingvid, free English video lessons. Let's see, the first one here. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? Okay, how is it that I'm able to do that better than I am the normal Wikipedia article? That doesn't make any sense. Well, whatever. Let's see another one. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? If he would chuck, he would, as much as he could, and chuck as much wood as a woodchuck could if a woodchuck could chuck wood. Really makes you think. Um, let's try Googling warm up tongue twisters. Oh, this one is from BBB Press or Beat by Beat Press. Uh, rehearsal warm up. Let's see. These are much shorter than those other ones. The ultimate list of tongue twisters. Unique New York. Three free throws. Red leather, yellow leather. I thought, but the thought I thought wasn't the thought I thought I thought. 1-1 was a racehorse. 2-2 was 1-2. When 1-1 won the one race, 2-2 won 1-2. Say this sharply, say this sweetly, say this shortly, say this softly. Say this 16 times very quickly. Rubber baby buggy bumpers. Uh, Silly Sally swiftly shooed 7 silly sheep. The 7 silly sheep, silly Sally shooed, shilly shallied south. These sheep shouldn't sleep in a shack. Sheep should sleep in a shed. Jeez, that one's painful. I wish to wish the wish you wish to wish, but if you wish the witch wishes. I won't wish the wish you wish to wish. The big black back break broke badly. I thought that said the big black baby at first, and I was like, wow, that is incredibly racist. But I guess not. What was the one Ron Burgundy said? The human torch was denied a bank loan. Apparently that's not a real one, which is a shame. Okay, well, that's enough of that, I think. So tonight I have a little bit of I don't know really what to call it actually. It's called Folio, or rather, the program that made it is called Folio. It's a little thing from the Salt Lake Community College. It's a literary magazine. It was given away free one day in promotion with this club. I assume it's just sort of a creative exercise. Oh, yes, there's a little thing on the intro of the cover. Folio publishes the best student writing and art from Salt Lake Community College while maintaining a sincere and mom like concern about what you ate for breakfast this morning, whatever that means. Folio accepts original, unpublished submissions of writing and art from current students, faculty, or staff of Salt Lake Community College, and publishes both online and in print twice a year. It also urges you to get enough sleep and moderate your extra space caffeine intake. Submit your creative work, blah, blah, blah. I was handed this, and I'm actually really interested in it to see a bit of short stories. Like that other short story that I read on the stream a few weeks back, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. That one was inspired by a short story that I wrote, which in kind was inspired by a short story that I read. Um, so I picked this up hoping to not only get some more short stories as personal reference, and perhaps even in the hopes of some inspiration, but also to what's the word I'm looking for here? Well, I think this might be a good chance to, submit some of my work. These are pretty short. Most of them are like 1 or 2 pages, and I don't think they would accept something like Blood, Sweat, and Tears, which is just as well because it's sort of a strange story. But I would like to try and maybe submit some things, maybe even submit a picture, because there are pictures in this, there are illustrations and the like. But anyways, this particular magazine I got is called Morning, like the morning, as in good morning, but there's a U in the middle of it to indicate morning, as in death. The U is in parentheses, however, which is very artistic. There appears to be a flower, I believe a daisy on the cover, and it's superimposed over a black background. So, it's very important. I do like to joke and mock all the time, whenever possible. However, I must admit that I think it's great to have an outlet like in college where you can make your work a little more public. And college kids, they have a tendency to be pretentious, and I think that's great, honestly. It's hard for me to explain exactly why, but I feel like being pretentious is a lot of fun. Um, and that's something that I like to do. I especially like to do it on Instagram. I'll post pictures and some song verse with it and act like uh, it isn't just me taking some silly picture. It's a lot of fun. But anyways, I have not read any of this actually, except for a little tidbit that I read just before streaming. But I would like to give this a read real quick. Not all of it. There's about 100 pages, give or take. Some are pictures, some are verses. But I'd like to give a sample of what it is and see what it's like. And maybe even while I'm on stream, I might look at submitting my own short stories and go onto the website, and because they did give me a couple of pamphlets. I'll talk a little bit about those in a bit, though. Okay, so after the table of contents, there's a little page on here that says morning, as in uh, good morning, day of a new dawn of a new day, rebirth, waking up to a bird's song as the sunlight caresses your cheek. So I guess it's sort of a definition. And then beneath that is mourning, as in I am in mourning. Anguish over lost, it says. Radio silence. That's weird. I've never heard radio silence used as being synonymous with mourning, but perhaps I just don't mourn enough. Anguish over lost. Anguish over loss. Radio silence. The feeling of one's fingertip against your cheek for the last time. Oh, you gotta love pretentious student art. Okay, so immediately after this, there's a black page, and it's not quite regular paper. It is magazine-like. I don't know how you would describe that, but it's got that slick feeling to it. Not solid community college feeling, but slick as in slippery. It's black with white text. It's a poem by Amy Schaefer called To My Sunrise. It says, "You are my sunrise, I your star. We'd mock the moon and laugh at the sun. Our young years had run out then both, and in some earthly way outshine them as well. We defied everything, eating ramen noodles for breakfast, midnight binges on Cheerios and Captain Crunch. Nights spent under the flood of blue light with Dinosaur Jr., Jane's Addiction, and Gin Rummy, wagering stolen cigarettes. Then we'd start again, every day. Now I rewind your image on the TV past 3, sift through memories secured in cardboard, confirming that you are still the most beautiful girl in braids and long skirts. You are still the most beautiful sunrise. Damn it. Oh, watch your language, Amy. You are always looking for someone to believe in, always overlooking yourself. I will curse any god, argue any scripture, if it will bring you back for only one last dawn." Well, it sounds like Amy here is very sad over the loss of her friend. Well, I suppose I shouldn't mock. But there is, opposite of that page, a painting by Amelia Talbot called Sunrise. It's a bright fiery orange background with little hills of bluish green, and there's a stag on top of them of a likewise color, and a very um, there's an eagle above that. Although I have to admit the eagle is not as good as the rest of the picture. I guess I suppose to be fair, I can't really mock somebody for writing a story about loss when the whole book is supposed to be about mourning, both about the good morning and the I'm in mourning sort. Ugh, pretentious college students. What are you going to do? There are so many bad words in this. I'm going to read this one because it's one page long. It's a poem by Samuel Scott called The Workshop. What other place is sensitivity S What other place is sensitivity so bold? Correct me if I'm wrong, but that does not seem to parse well. Whatever. What other place is sensitivity so bold? Every voice the member of a tin car demolition derby, or maybe sea urchins just begging to be touched. I think it's true the paper bleeds when marked by a foreign pen, and we feel it. It's a part of a growth, they say, finding that soft bit of skin to graft into a draft before you. To be made smoother or so thicker skin could grow in its place, I'm not sure. But we prepare them as much as we can, the poems we send off to war to return, with their battle scars hardened and eager to uphold. Good poetry, or die trying. The fear of any father whose daughter is left, praying that under the markup and the burden of words and clicks and comments and corrections, she'll know she's beautiful. I did not understand that in the slightest, so that must mean it's pretty good. The one after that isn't even a poem, it's an actual short story. It's not written in verse, it's just a story. But I don't think I'm going to read it because I think it's about fishing. And frankly, this stream is boring enough. I'm really curious about this. I don't believe they would pay the students to write, even though they do only choose submissions. I certainly hope they didn't get paid for these because uh, while I'm no professional, I don't think I would consider these worth the ink they are printed on. But as long as they're students, they're learning, they're having fun, what else does that matter? It's more important to express yourself than it is to make a profit or even to be good. This other one, this next poem, I'm not going to read it because some of it is in bold and I don't think I can do it justice by reading it out loud. But it's interesting. The first word is in lowercase and italicized. It's I almost want to say an onomatopoeia. I don't know. Is the word blast considered an onomatopoeia? I don't think it is, but I don't know what else you would call it, which is perhaps my failing. Um, blast goes the mountain, and then another italicized word, hooray, goes the lobbyist. While I can see the birds fleeing, the water retreating. Uh, I don't think I can stomach this, even though it isn't even that long. But that was a little excerpt from I Can Feel the Mountains Crying by Ness Daughtry. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably not. Oh, here's a short story by a Holly Bland. Uh, that last name is what intrigues me, because if she's as bland as she says she is, well, I intend to find out. Uh, the title of this, however, I don't know if that's a name or a word or some made up thing. It's Kinnoul, I think. Kinnow. Oh, excuse me. Oull. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to read a little bit of that. It's like a page and a quarter in size. For someone who spent most of my childhood running wild and barefoot through the rural southern hollers, I've turned into a farce of that once fearless girl. I'm an indoorsy type now. On a carefully planned out whim, I traveled overseas for the first time this summer. It reeks of madness, I know, flying 5,000 miles to stay in the home of a gaming buddy I met online. It stinks of stupidity to spend nearly 30 hours divided between planes, trains, coaches, and cars to escape the chokingly dry Utah desert I have only begrudgingly accepted as my residence. I am not mad. I am not stupid. I made a leap of not faith, for I reject the notion, hope. I had hoped that there was more to this parched existence I had carved out for myself. I found this hope in the unlikeliest of places. Jet lagged, cold, deliri- ah, so much for tongue twisters. Deliriously happy, I stared up at the base of Knoll Hill in upper trepidation. My partner and I had already traveled to town. I was in pain from a misstep on the cobblestones at Oxford. My boot had not held up at the river crossing. My jacket was no match against the mist enveloping the region. I hadn't been hiking in decades. Perhaps I was mad or stupid after all. Still, I persisted. I could feel the little girl inside me grinning as I took those first few seemingly vertical steps. Vert- Whatever. She would have loved this. I could remember that grin, once ubiquitous, but hidden for ages. I could remember the unfettered laugh of my childhood, the joy that leapt out eagerly at every adventure. I felt the same joy bubbling just under the surface. Perhaps I was not so removed from my past as I supposed. Hand in hand with my partner, I took each agonizing step forward heavily. I waited for the familiar ache of my lungs, the signal that I desperately needed more oxygen. It did not come. I breathed the rich, clean air of Scotland greedily. The cool mist seeped under my skin, soothing my chapped soul. It looked like I was walking into a storybook. Flight of fancy I allowed myself, with it, when the mists were thick enough to obscure the path forward. Onward we walked. Onward we climbed. I was drenched in some unholy mixture of rain, sweat, and inexplicable tears. I was in horrific physical pain, but my heart and soul were screaming in ecstasy. This is what I was lacking. This first step into cultivated wilderness. I could feel the cracked husk of myself washing away. I shook the metaphorical dust from my feet and continued to climb. Shall we stop? Are you hurting? Are you okay? My partner asked valid questions, as opposed to those invalid questions. Let's keep going, I repeated. Let's keep going. The trees grew taller and stronger. I grew taller and stronger. The path meandered around the hill. Rocks slick with water threatened to trip me. Still I persisted, onward, onward, onward. My progress seemed so slow, but forward I continued. It was never ending. I was so tired, so chilled, so exultant in my unspoiled surroundings that I was astonished to reach the summit so soon. The promised view of the city below was concealed by the mist, but above the clouds I cared very little. I was blissfully at peace. Blissfully at peace? As opposed to what? Chaotically at peace? Uneasily at peace? I was healthily at health for the first time in my adult life, no longer a tumbleweed drifting in the wind. I suddenly had roots and strength and felt the world at my fingertips. I was again that feral child, nestled safely in the arms of Mother Nature. The mist cleared as if a curtain was pulled back by an invisible hand. Across the river bend, a ship destined for Dundee appeared briefly, swallowed quickly by by the thick fog once more. I laughed aloud, startling the silence in my partner. Not mousy, not quiet, not contained or constrained. I laughed truly and jubilantly. Sometimes, just sometimes, life makes a metaphor an obvious reality. This was one of those instances. My ship had come in. I always find that it's funny when people say that they reject faith, but then speak that they, in terms of them having faith. Let's see here. Like sometimes people refer to a divine force, not as God, but as life or the universe, and they seem to acknowledge some sort of divinity or higher power, but not necessarily in a more traditional way. That in and of itself is a demonstration of faith, despite the author's protest. Or should I say the poet's protest? No, no, because this is not written in verse. Although I am rather envious of someone being able to go to the Scottish Highlands like that. I would love to go see it myself. There's a lot of these. I suppose I shouldn't make fun, but I mean, after all, these people are just college students or perhaps faculty, though more likely to be students. They're expressing themselves, they're learning about learning, they're coming to terms with who they are and expanding their horizons. It's not really right for me to make fun of that, but then again, I am kind of an asshole, so here we go. Let's see. Ah, here's one that seems to be about a breakup. This one is by Taylor Aragon. Yes, the King of Rohan. This poem is called Closure. Today I severed the last tie I had with you. I flipped the page, turned the chapter, and chucked the fucking book in the bin. I hope YouTube doesn't ban me for saying bad words. We lay in bed together those last few nights, as I planned on driving my car off a bridge, or perhaps slitting my wrist. I hadn't quite decided which, but by the grace of my God, who you laughed at and made a mockery of, my mother finally pried your poisonous hands from around my throat. Now it's been a year since I last saw you, and I'm grateful for once. Grateful you're gone. Grateful I'm still here. Grateful to exist for the first time in 22 years. I am alive. My heart is beating, though it still aches sometimes. I'll spare you the show, because I am jacked up on antidepressants and drowning in school debt, and 20 pounds heavier than I was the last time we spoke. But, God, I have hope. Well, that wasn't as funny as I'd hoped it would be. Well, drowning in school debt. I want to. I'm curious. Are they? They're 22 years old. They're going to Salt Lake Community College. Like, how in debt do you have to be in debt? Because it's not that expensive, I don't think. Maybe I'm just a little crazy. Oh well. It looks like this stream might be dropping a bit of frames. I don't know if that's my internet connection or if YouTube is acting up on me because I said a swear word. Um, see, maybe not. I would like to find one that's actually fun to make fun of, and perhaps I should have read these ahead of time, but that would require actual work. Oh, here's one about the testing center. It's like 2 pages. Do I really want to read a story about a man who goes into a testing center and freaks out because he's taking a test? You know, perhaps I perhaps my expectations are too high, but I don't know how to finish that thought. I was going to say that perhaps these poems are not structured. To be fair, I don't know much about poetry. That's actually one aspect of English that I lack at, something I'm not particularly good at. Oh, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Oh, this better be good. Okay, so this one, oh, dang nabbit. I think these might all be depressing. I found one that's called Ninjutsu in Suburbia, which sounds amazing. Um, but it's 3 pages, and uh, I think I'm just going to go ahead and read it. Again, Ninjutsu in Suburbia by Michael Palmer. Hope this one's not depressing. Salt Lake City, Utah is my home. As our legends have it, Brigham Young stood on a mountain pass to the east overlooking this desiccated valley on July 24th, 1847, and declared, "This is the place." Well, I guess my ancestors who were with him must have bought it, because we're still here. As a general rule, almost nothing grows well in Salt Lake City. Oh, well, he abbreviates it to SLC. I don't know if that is artistic choice or mere arbitration. I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions. People know this. People know that nothing grows well in Salt Lake City. It's common sense. The altitude of 4,500 feet above sea level, the extremes of winter and summer punctuated by brief periods in between that hardly rate the rank of seasons, and the fact that life in the high desert means any rain that falls in summer feels like an afterthought, combine to make this a hard country. Life in the early days of the valley was hard and strange. That it was hard we can believe. That it was strange history tells us. You'll have to look it up for yourself because you'd never believe me if I told you. The early pioneers were a close-knit community, and they looked out for each other, sharing what they sharing what they grew in an effort to turn this worthless chunk of desert into a rose. Now there are nearly a million souls who make their home across a Wasatch Front from Provo to Ogden, pushing west from the mountains to a place we call Tooele. Room to Room to grow we've got, and we've used it. Most of the center, most of the center mass of this sprawl, Salt Lake City, uh, of this sprawl, SLC itself has become fairly normal, with an urban center and suburbs that surround this like circled wagons around the arid sagebrush desert by which the city is besieged. The mores of our community are based in the long tradition of blooming the rose, and they are immutable. Food should not be wasted. If you have more than you can eat, and it won't keep for the future, give it away. That simple, misguided virtue inherited from our fathers was how the zucchini wars began. Is this an essay or a story? Whatever. Like any suburban plot holder, my dad grew a garden, or tried to, common sense notwithstanding. Yeah, what a fool, trying to grow a garden in a place. Oh, what an idiot dad. Almost nothing grows well here, as I said, but there are exceptions. For reasons not yet known or yet unknown to science, magic, or God, a single black beauty zucchini seed introduced to the alkaline and otherwise infertile soil of our valley will grow into a plant that produces harvest to feed three armies in a single summer. Call me crazy, but I think scientists know why things are capable of growing in Utah. I mean, we're talking about zucchini. They're not exactly known for being hard to grow. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They're basically a weed that you can eat. Whatever. Perhaps that's the point. The joke by little Michael Palmer. These, these are not your normal zucchini, you understand. Not the polite little 12-inch jobs in the supermarket produce aisle, all tame and ready to be made savory and delicious with any scant application of culinary intent. This dude hates everything. Like people who cook. Ugh. Oh no, these are monsters. If you don't get them all while they're young, if they escape notice for a few days, they'll sprint forward with the growth curve to become 3 feet long and 2 feet in circumference practically overnight. There was a time, maybe, when Dad grew the zucchini for food. That time is long past. Now he grows zucchini as a first line of defense. Any gardener so woefully innocent as to leave those broad-leaved spiky vines out of their suburban plot is volunteering to be the victim of unrelenting charity. Mutually assured cultivation is what it is, really. It started simply enough. A few zucchini on our doorstep, with a polite note. Enjoy the bounty dinner, the bounty, neighbor. There's no comma there. Of course, we were hip deep in our own bounty. But there you go. There you go. There you go is what people say when they don't know what to say. If you use that in your writing and you're not using it as dialogue, you are lazy. Anyways, then people started trying to avoid the gift by keeping their front doors open and the lights on so they could shout at intercession, "Thanks, we have enough already." That escalated quickly into the mailbox bomb or the side door sneak. Other methods of evading the annual largesse proved ineffective. Dad did try growing yellow squash one year. Oh no, we just prefer the crookneck. Thank you. It was a weak defense, and it brought us no quarter. Far too many of our neighbors took pity on us. That was the year Mom invented the zucchini dill pickle. A couple years back, our dad brought home a guard dog. Not only could the mutt not be bothered to bark at people he already knew by smell, the bastard creature wouldn't even eat any of the vegetables they left behind. Useless. His word, not mine. There have been incidents when two people with generosity in their hearts and determination in their eyes meet in a back alley, each armed with a wheelbarrow full of charity. Nothing good will come of it. Last year, when we came home covered in seeds and with strings of goo hanging off the buttons of his flannel shirt, we didn't have to ask. He would have denied it. But it was clear as anything. There had been a skirmish on the front lines. Some of our cagier neighbors resorted to subtle espionage. The zucchini delivered to them were carefully recorded as to origin. They would shred them, freeze the bags of shredded zucchini, and wait patiently for their opportunity. As soon as anyone fell ill or pregnant or admitted to having a bad day, they could expect to get their own zucchini back, baked into bread, cookies, casserole, or what have you. I think they did it for the sheer petty satisfaction of irony, because I know their freezers are filled much faster than they are emptied. Oh, we have tried to make good use of the things. Despite generations of grudging research, these wild manifestations of exceptional fertility will not yield to edibility with anything like pleasure involved. Mock apple pie made with zucchini, zucchini boats, stuffed zucchini, fried zucchini medallions, zucchini bread, zucchini chopped up in casseroles, zucchini hidden by the cupful in soups and stews. It is a noble but impotent gesture repeated every year. The bottom line, the inescapable truth, is that anyone with a plant is going to have too many, and anyone without a plant is going to welcome the sweet release of death before they crave another summer squash. Now, in the summer of my 18th year, preparing for his nocturnal rounds to deliver his surplus crop, Dad is dressed in black from head to toe. Black baseball cap worn beak forward, unadorned black t-shirt. Band logos are too visible. Black Wrangler jeans, black socks, black tennis shoes. Dad has gone full-on zucchini ninja. So, who's on the list for tonight? Johnson was bragging about taking Friday off and going fishing. If his boat's gone, he'll get the worst of it. Peters? No, Ike Peters has been babysitting his tomatoes all summer. If I hit him and get caught, I'll come back with more than I took out. Not worth the risk. Anyone else then? Got Blankenship in my sights. But I'll have to play that by ear. They've got a teenage daughter, like I need to tell you, who comes and goes all hours. If I catch her coming, I can blackmail her into taking some just by volunteering, not to mention what time I saw her come home. If she's out, just do the front porch classic. Thank you. For a moment over this small talk, our eyes locked and the real conversation took place without words. Don't be like me, son. Study hard. Take those AP tests. Live a zucchini-free life. I'll do that, Dad. I promise. Okay, I'm willing to give this guy the benefit of the doubt and say that he's deliberately being facetious and over-exaggerating and saying that like everything is terrible when there's no actual reason to think that. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to mock him. Oh my, this book is horribly depressing. And I thought my stories were bad. Oh, here's one that I think I can relate to. This one is just called Poetry by Heather Graham. I hate all this poetry, she will say, as she sifts through poems and poems all day. Too much longing, lust, and despair. Too much, too much. I just don't care. She hates all the poetry, you see. So I wrote a silly poem to her from me, with matching rhyme, cliched verse, and cadence and meter to make it much worse. I hate all these poems, is what she will cry. If you are not the bard, then why even try? Don't waste my time with purpley prose. Too much image and flow, my hatred just grows. She hates all these poems, it's true, my friend. So a couplet I've made misery have no end. She loves villains and puppies, but not poetry. She hates all these poems, and maybe now me. I like that. That was actually pretty good. Good job, Heather Graham. You actually made something that was amazing. And I just got 2 messages on Steam. And I'm going to tell them that I'm doing something very important. And they're probably going to assume that I'm doing something very inappropriate. Let's see if that works. Did that mute him? I knew it. I know it. He accused me of doing something I probably shouldn't say on YouTube, lest I get demonetized. I'm not even monetized, but I don't want to take the risk. Yes, back to the poetry. I like it. There's like something here that I actually enjoy. How many, let's see, how many are there in this book? I'm going to count. Are we ready? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. What comes after 12? 14, 16, 18. 18 times 4 would be 24? No, that's way off. 32. That would be 100 and a lot. 114? Let's find out. Nope, I'm wrong. Or am I? 72. I was way off. That's why I'm taking pre-algebra instead of a real math class. So a quick calculation says that there's 72 things in this book. I think they are all by different people too. I don't think any of them repeat. Wait, I might be wrong. Heather Graham? Did I see your name before? Or am I thinking of another Graham? There's somebody in here named Celeste Rota Coronado, which is an amazing name. I kind of wish I had that name. Oh, yes, okay. That one by Heather Graham, poetry that I just read, she actually has at least one other thing in here called Wisdom. I'm going to read that because I like that first poem. Maybe, if I can find it. Yes, it says 26, but 26 is a picture. Oh, no, it's... Okay, so she took a picture, actually, of an elephant in like, the color run. Looks like it's probably a statue, but it's kind of a weird picture, but, I can dig it. Let's see if she wrote anything else that got accepted. Oh, she did. Okay. Heather Graham wrote something else. Maybe? Maybe it's another picture. Aha! Another poem. It's called Ray, like Ray Charles, which is appropriate because the background is black. I reach for you with trembling hands, our bodies touching, fingertips waltzing across glistening skin, colliding in smooth kisses of regard, caressing. Oh dear. I long for you with trembling heart, our moment lingering, insides fluttering with swift infatuation, igniting in unexpected affection, loving. I called for you with trembling tongue, our eyes meeting, footsteps whispering goodbyes across aquarium floors, disappearing in crowds among the other fish, forgetting. Well, that was not very good. I'm sorry, Heather, but you're terrible, officially. I say that like she's listening to this. My word, this is like stuff I wrote in high school. It's all terrible. She did write, okay, Heather Graham wrote something else that got accepted. And she has 4 things in this book. That's impressive. Page 103. Because I used to write angsty stuff when I was in high school. And now, like, I can't even read it because I go back to it and I'm like, ugh. Oh, okay. She actually submitted 2 pictures. This one's like a crash test dummy, but it looks like it's probably some sort of figure art. It's got an eyeball hanging out of it. It looks surprisingly human for a crash test dummy. And it has one of those mouths that marionettes have. You know, the ones that like hang up and down instead of just being there. It's very artsy and it's very black and white. Here's a really short poem by Amy Schaefer. I think I read something by her earlier, actually. Let me see. Yes, she wrote the first poem in this book. And now she wrote a different one that's like a paragraph long, which means that it's really good. Amy Schaefer, a poem called Night. When night blooms inside my room, porcelain dreams flood through me until all reality is picked clean. I do not ache for the morning or its piercing sun, but for night's delicate unconsciousness to take me where you are. I lied. That was terrible. Thank you, Amy. Please go away. Oh, okay. So, the cover of this magazine, like I said, is a daisy over a black background. And that same image is actually one of the pictures submitted. It's the last one in here. And for some reason, on the inside, it's in black and white. It's called Warmth in the Darkness by Kimberly Piling. Or Pilling? There's 2 L's in there, so maybe it's Pilling. I really wonder if I could submit just like the dumbest thing and just try to make like the worst thing possible. Not necessarily in terms of content, but in terms of quality. Just the worst thing possible and submit it and see if it gets accepted. Because that would be amazing. And then I could mock them for the rest of my life. I really shouldn't make fun of them because, like I said, I like being pretentious and I like this sort of thing. And I know that it serves a bigger purpose, but that's not very funny. And neither am I. Oh, here's one that might be a little more interesting. Uh, it's by Natalie Montoya called Short Excerpts from Love Poems, a Trilogy. They're very short. Number one. And when I eat apples, I still twist the stem off and hope that the letter it lands on will be yours. How innocent. Juvenile love. Number two. Because maybe I don't deserve better. I just deserve different. Compatibility, you know? Number three. For you left a permanent imprint, and no matter how I try to smudge it, I know I'll always have a hint of you in me. That's disgusting. It's somewhat of a tragedy because you know that these people are probably having like a really hard time in their lives. And then they try and express that and they just pour their heart out as best as they can onto the page. And then I come along and tell them it's no good. Well, I don't know how to finish that exclamation. But I liked at least one poem in here, and that is worth a lot, actually. It was genuinely good. Let me ask you, those of you who are still on here, has the sound been cutting out at all? Because I feel like the stream is not quite at 100%, if you know what I mean. Feel free to tell me or to just ignore me. Either way, I'll assume the same. And while I'm waiting for your 20-minute response, I'm gonna skim over this. Take a nice long drink. Well, I think there's only one other person on the stream here, and I believe she's probably asleep, but that's okay. I don't mind. I'm going to keep reading because I enjoy being a dickhead. I could never be an English teacher, much to my chagrin. Is that how it's pronounced? I always get crap about that because I can never remember how to pronounce it. Chagrin, 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 sugarin, whatever it is. But I can never be an English teacher because as much as I enjoy teaching people and as much as I enjoy explaining things, students are just terrible. They're not very good. And I'm just going to sit here the whole time making fun of them, which is not how a teacher should be, obviously. A teacher should be very supportive. And it's quite hypocritical of me because I would be terrible, even worse than I am now, if I hadn't had great teachers. Oh, Shelby, you're awake. I'm surprised. How is the sound? Are my readings cutting out? I know that sometimes I take like weird stretches of pause, but that's the pros usually. Because sometimes YouTube is a little finicky and I don't know how well it's working. In fact, I'm going to time it if you don't mind. I'm going to say now, and then I want you to say now, and then I'm going to see how long it takes for me to receive that message. Are you ready? Now. Every time I start the stopwatch on my phone, that sound from the show 24 starts to play. You know the countdown sound. I'm going to look that up while I'm waiting because I like that sound. Okay. That one. The very intense one. No matter what I'm doing, that's the sound that plays. But a swift response is much appreciated. I am not quiet. I am very loud. Am I quiet? I don't think I'm quiet. Maybe I'm a little quiet. Okay, so according to my stopwatch, that took approximately 55 seconds from me telling you that message to me to you hearing it and responding it and me seeing it in the YouTube chat. 58-second delay. That's great. I love it. Thank you, YouTube. Well, I guess I shouldn't complain. I mean, it's not like I have a big audience. But you're all lovely. Thank you for coming out tonight. Okay, there's another poem here I kind of want to read. Well, I say I want to read. I don't know if I actually want to read it. But we'll find out, won't we? You can talk to me wherever you like, Shelby. Hi, how you doing? Although I do have the sound notification disabled. Because otherwise, excuse me, we hear it on stream. But that's okay. Kimmery wants me to give her a shout out. Hello, Kimmery. Thank you for coming out to the stream. Uh, your puns are appreciated, and you can't tell, but I'm making big old quotation marks with my fingers when I say that. Thank you for coming out, Kimmery. Okay, one more poem from the book, and then I think I'm going to give up on this folio because it kind of sucks. Although it was free, what can you say? Hmm. At the end of it is called "At the End of the Lane" by C.C. Bean, Biehn. It's not okay. What's not okay? Oh, great! Did I say something offensive again? What did I say? What did I say this time? You know what? I don't care. I'm gonna start reading. At the End of the Lane by C.C. Bean. Bean? Bean? At the End of the Lane. I'm still trying to explain your disappearance. How the woods seemed to open, wide stretch an arm, a branch. You walked right in and left the search party the lost ones. Or maybe you weren't meant for life, thrown from the womb, your mother, prematurely, into a sea too small to contain. Such a wild tempest, she didn't want you either. And there are no oceans here. Now the trail is overgrown, but my hand brushes a gash in the wood, a scrape of scarlet fabric from the coat you always wore. Torn. I pause. What happened here? You always walked a path separate from ours. A character born from distrust, from the spaces in an author's ribcage. Wicked boy, couldn't you see this from the start? Nothing will ever be your own. Still I searched through forests, tangled and wild as your hair. A clearing ahead. I find you at the end of the lane, standing still as one of the trees. You fled too. It becomes you. Silent, I take your hand. You say, look up, and a burning trail cuts across sky. As the line recedes, for the first time, I can see the stars. Well, I'll be darned. That was actually okay. You see, that's the nice thing about poetry is that you don't necessarily have to understand it to appreciate it. There was something that was said on, um, what was it called? Classical 89, the radio station here in Salt Lake City, Salt Lake City, Ogden, and Provo. They said, "You like you like night?" No, I guess I can't get mad at you. I mean, I can, but I won't get mad at you. Anyways, Shelby, you're always here. I would just be shouting back at you. It'd be like if you and I met up in person. I was like, "Hey, shout out to Shelby. She's right there. Hi, how you doing, Shelby?" I mean, I can do that. That's just really weird. Anyways, um, poetry. Classical 89, one of the guys talked about it. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's one of the regulars on there. And uh, he said poetry is like walking because, walking is an outdated mode of transportation. We don't need to walk. We've got bicycles, we've got cars, we've got motorcycles, we've got, any manner of things that can get us around. But he says the reason why we go on walks is to slow down. We go there because it's not as fast as the rest of the world. It's not as crazy or hectic or, um, well, it's just not as frantic. Even though it takes longer and it's impractical, we enjoy taking those walks because it allows us a chance to see nature, to partake of the world, and to really look around us. Um, I agree. I love taking walks. And that's part of the reason why is it allows me to take a breather. Um, is that it? Even though I do it sometimes, I do it sometimes because I want to slow down. Even though my legs might be tired, even though maybe it's been a long day, I will sometimes still go out for a walk because having that breath of fresh air is great. Um, And he says the same thing is true about poetry. Poetry is very impractical. Poetry is very slow and strange. And it's hard to, well, maybe it's not hard to, but when you read a lot of these poems, they're staggered. They're not just like when you read a book, it's just paragraph after paragraph. When you read a poem, sometimes you'll have maybe not even a whole sentence, maybe half of the sentence, maybe a word or two on a single line, like that one that I just read. Wide, stretch an arm, and then it breaks to the next line, a branch, then it breaks to the next line. You walked right in. This is supposed to give a poem its rhythm and its flow. I don't power walk because I am straight. Thank you, Kimberly. And also, I am choosing to ignore that pun. Also, Shelby, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be mean. I'm just giving you a hard time. Thank you for coming out to the stream. But that's the point of poetry. It is technically more practical to write something like a story or an essay where you can really go over things and bowl over them and really just flow out your ideas. But the point of poetry is like walking to slow down. You're not going crazy. You're just in fact you're doing the opposite. You're reeling yourself down. You're taking a moment to really appreciate things, how you feel and what you see and what you experience, and to reflect on the things that you know in order to make yourself feel better. Um, and I really that really struck a chord with me. I don't know a lot about poetry, to be honest. It's something I struggle with in like English, to be honest. It's not something I'm great at. Even reading or writing or any of it. Going on walks is great. I do it all the time. I haven't done one today, but that's because I've been uh, playing video games. Anyways, but I really like that last one, and that talked a little bit about walking, and it really reminded me of that thing that I had learned about walking and poetry. And all sorts of things. And you can really see that sense of wonder in somebody like Walt Whitman in Leaves of Grass, which is something I actually had thought about reading, excuse me, on the stream. I'm sorry, Shelby. I do appreciate you coming now here. But to be honest, if I'm being honest, I feel like most of the time when I'm reading on here, I'm either just talking to myself or I'm talking to you. So I don't think about giving people shout outs. But I do appreciate you coming out here. Thank you, Shelby. Your support is always appreciated. Anyways, um, so Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass, which I think is actually public domain. Let me look that up um, real quick. I think yes. And I had thought about reading it on stream. I was playing the new Resident Evil 2 remake. Um, Resident Evil 2, of course, was released back in 1998. I still remember my brothers renting it from Blockbuster, and years later I tried it again, and I was like, yeah, this game is great, even though it's like 10, 15 years old. Now it's 21 years old, and they remade it completely from the ground up. Um, Looks amazing, a lot of fun to play. It's really addicting. I would have kept playing it, honestly, if I didn't have this stream to go on. But so Walt Whitman is something that reminds me of walking. There's a lot of nature and a lot of observation in his. And let me think. There was another one that I'm trying to remember that was very similar to that. J.R.R. Tolkien. That's who it was. Um, I'm gonna read one of his real quick. Actually, this one is. I'm pretty sure. Yes, yes. This one was actually central to the story of The Lord of the Rings, called "All That Is Glitter Does Not." Oh my word! "All That Is Gold Does Not Glitter" by J.R.R. Tolkien. All that is glitter. Oh my word. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes of fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be the blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king. Now that is a poem that is specific to the story. Um, that is specific to the Lord of the Rings because it's about Aragorn and how one day uh, he'll reforge the blade and get his crown. But it's such a great poem in its own right. If you know nothing about the Lord of the Rings, you can read that and you can appreciate it. Um, and J.R.R. Tolkien loved to take walks. Uh, I remember reading somewhere that he loved trees, just loved them. Like he would seriously go on a walk and he would discover a new tree that he'd never seen before. And he would sit there and he would observe it seriously for like a half hour at least. And he would just sit there just at this one tree and look at it just because he loved them so much. There's another one by Tolkien that I really like. I'm going to find it. Let's see if I can find. Okay, this one's a little longer. And this is another one that was a song made by Bilbo Baggins, who of course is a character from The Hobbit and then a little bit in Lord of the Rings. It's called "Upon the Hearth Fire." Dang that! But upon the hearth, the fire is red. Okay, upon the hearth, the fire is red. Beneath the roof, there is a bed. But not yet weary are our feet. Still round the corner we may meet a sudden tree or standing stone that none have seen but we alone. Tree and flower and leaf and grass, let them pass, let them pass. Hill and water under sky, pass them by, pass them by. Still round the corner there may wait a new road or a secret gate. And though we pass them by today, tomorrow we may come this way and take the hidden paths that run towards the moon or to the sun. Apple, thorn, and nut and sloe, let them go, let them go. Sand and stone and pool and dell, fare you well, fare you well. Home is behind, the world ahead, and there are many paths to tread, through shadows to the edge of night, until the stars are all alight. Then world behind and home ahead, we'll wander back to home and bed, Mist and twilight, cloud and shade, away shall fade, away shall fade. Fire and lamp and meat and bread, and then to bed, and then to bed. That's another one that's about walking and discovering. The term for it, um, I get it, Thoreau, like Henry David Thoreau. That's funny, Kim Marie. Ha ha. And I'm only laughing because that joke is smart. But that's Tolkien, you know. Dude loved nature. And that's a theme that's present in The Lord of the Rings. It's a love of nature. The word for that is wanderlust, which is something that I feel myself that I want to um, travel and understand and explore. But anyways, that's the poetry from the folio. But there is actually a website, and I kind of wanted to take a look at it. Figured I might do it on stream because they brought out this literary magazine specifically uh, to recruit people, join the staff, or submit now. Apparently, it's an award-winning literary magazine, and they also have a creative writing group. And I hesitate to enter creative writing groups because I feel like that really narrows. Um, that's that's kind of sad, Kemery. That's kind of sad. Um, I don't really like creative writing groups too much because I feel like I kind of feel like it's this book where most of it I'm just like, this is such, why am I even doing this? And I don't want to be negative. I don't want to bring people down, especially not an aspiring writer. You know, that'd be a hypocrite. That'd be hypocrite of me. I'm not gonna do that. But I will read a little bit of it. Let me see here. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna read one of my pretentious little poems that I wrote, just to contrast it, because I feel like that would be accepted. I don't think it's good, but that's not what I'm. That's not my point. Let me see if I can find it because it's not actually. Um, it's in a text file. Okay, yes. So you can call it a poem. It's not. It doesn't have much verse. It's more just a spiel, I guess. I didn't really give it a name except maybe I am still here. It's kind of short, but I'll read it. I can see it now, you lying down, hair on your face, the world in your eyes, the moment of gray, feeling time passing over your skin. Can't bring yourself to stand up or even think, but you're there anyways, listening to something that isn't there. We're beyond it now, but the worst of it sticks around. Lingers there like a statue, a monument to the things we hate. Couldn't bring it down now that you're so dead. The air inside is gone, swimming away like color, just trying to get some sleep. But we're done with crying. Can't find the ink to write the script. Hands as still and silent as the rest of us. Just a little longer now, carrying stones for the fallen. I'm here for you, if you remember. I am still here. So that's what it was called. And I lied. I didn't call it I Am Still Here. I called it The Moment of Gray. I don't know what it means. It was kind of a spur of the moment thing. I guess it's about depression, maybe. But I feel like that's something I would have written. And if I had been going to Slick at the time and submitted it, I feel like they would have accepted it. Even though I look back on it now, I'm like, what was I even thinking? Oh, Oh, I almost forgot about this. Okay, I actually do have a legitimate poem here that I'm kind of proud of. I don't have very many of them. But before I do that, it was inspired by a picture, and I want to post that picture first. Um, so we'll see if I can find that picture first, and then I'll read the poem proper. This is a poem that actually has like meter and verse and rhythm and all that fun stuff to it. But I saw this picture on the internet and it inspired me. I see a lot of pictures on the internet, but this one really got my goat, so to speak. Not literally, because that would be weird, but figuratively. But what did you guys think of the moment of gray? Was it pretentious, or was it not pretentious enough? Why do you like it when I share my own writings, Shelby? How does that make you feel as an individual? I understand that, Lisa, but what can I do as an individual? And in fact, I'm curious, what did you think, Kimmery? Or are you just trying to decide what kind of pun you're going to make next? Because that's cool too. I just want to know. Okay, I found the picture. Also, for the record, you don't have to be nice if you don't want to be. Oh, okay. So this one, as you can see, it's kind of a weird picture. I'm not sure exactly the context, but I saw it and something about it really spoke to me. Um, I looked at it and I looked at the color palette. I looked at the sky, the overcast, the water. Um, there was sort of this nostalgia to it that I'll tell you a little secret about myself. In my head, I have this idea of what a perfect fantasy story looks like. And it's based on a fleeting memory I have from my childhood. Not almost more of a dream than a memory. It's I'm not sure it ever really happened or if I just dreamt it up and wished for it to happen, which I'm totally cool with. I don't mind that at all. But I just really wanted um, my dream, my goal, my ultimate goal, if I can be said to have one as a writer, is to one day encapsulate that scene. Because I can imagine scenes for a story and I can write them down and I can type them out and I can work on them and flesh them out. But despite how prevalent this scene is in my head, despite how close to my heart it is, I struggle to express it. And that is frustrating to me because that's what I want my job to be as a writer. Yeah, I know my mind can be a little scary, especially where girls are concerned. But thanks for coming onto the stream anyway. So, I have this idea, and the thing is, like, I can write and I can articulate, and to be frank, I feel like I'm pretty good at it. I am not capable of expressing this memory. I don't know what it is. I can kind of describe it, but it's never right. And even those little descriptions are hard for me to do right. This picture doesn't quite do it justice, but it evokes that feeling and it brings it to the forefront. And so when I saw it, I was immediately immersed in the image. And it's kind of a weird image, you know? It's these guys half naked pushing this boat out to sea. But you look out and you see these working men, and you see this incredible uniform of gray and white and silver, and the sky and the ocean just meet together. And well, I kind of, not really a backstory, but I did sort of give it a backstory in which I was inspired by it. And so I wrote a poem. And because there's something otherworldly about this image, about these men all helping this guy who we don't see, any of their faces. Anybody that's facing us is in shadow, but they're all making an effort to go somewhere. They're all pushing against the sea, and there's, even though it's so gray and drab, there's this strange tranquility to it all. And I don't know if anyone else feels it that way about it as I do. Frankly, I think this picture is worthy of being in like the Louvre because that's how much it means to me. But I was so enraptured by this that I wrote a poem, and I'm going to read that. It's a poem I wrote called Tarnished Silver. The memory has thus come back, all at once, but not to attack. A land as a friend, lost then found, the bond unspoken among the sound. Forever gone are those gentle days, whose lolling hands did drift away. The journey's over, but the path is clear, what course I may take without any fear. I'll not look back, nor fight the length. I'll go ever on, needing no strength. I face my friend finally once more. I've entered the room without any door. And so I look, and thus I face land I desire, friend I embrace, limitless sky and endless sea, tarnished silver that swallows me. And that's it. That's all it is. That's my poem. I cannot really. I mean, how does a person express an emotion? I mean, obviously, there's the really easy ones. There's smile, and there's laughter, and there's joy. But to really, it's very strange. I can't quite explain it. And that's what's frustrating. But that frustration gave rise to this poem. There's something ethereal about it, something spiritual, as though I was discovering a piece of me that I always knew existed, but could never quite show other people. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was incapable of doing that. And that's what this picture means to me. And that's why I wrote that poem. It's a it's a personal poem, not about any specific thing in my life, but just about an emotion that I can't quite explain. So rather than saying I'm happy or I am sad, rather than smiling or laughing or crying, I wrote a little poem. I don't write a lot of poems. I wish I had more gusto to write them. When it comes to regular stories, when it comes to uh, literary stories like short stories or novels, I have a lot more gumption. I have a lot more drive. Poetry, not so much. But I am proud to say that I was able to write at least that tarnished silver. Maybe I'm no Walt Whitman. Maybe I'm no J.R.R. Tolkien. Maybe I am no William Blake. But I wrote at least one poem, and if nothing else, it's a piece of me. Frankly, I don't even understand that poem myself. I think it's about loss, but I'm not entirely sure. But, anyways, that's why this picture is important to me because it expresses an emotion that I have a hard time really, well, expressing. Um, yes, you're right, Shelby. There is an unspoken motion about artworks and music that speak to your soul. There was a video about David Lynch, who's a film director. It's called "The Treachery of Language." It's like a 10-minute video essay on this director. This guy, David Lynch, he's really known for his surrealism and his strangeness. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and save that to a playlist on this thing because it's a really good video that talks about not just this guy, David Lynch, but um, it talks about his struggle with language because he's an American. He speaks well. He's actually a bit of an actor himself, but um, he oh dang it, I lost my train of thought. He considers language to be, what would you call it? He considers language to be, this is really embarrassing. I like to talk so much crap about how great I am as a writer, and then words fail me. Oh, but you know what? That's the point. Is that it's language is such an imprisoning thing, and Joseph Smith himself said it. He said language is a narrow prison, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. And this documentary on David Lynch, this video essay, it really talks about how David Lynch himself feels about it. So it's a really interesting insight into language, and so I'm gonna link that in the chat, and then if you're ever bored, you can go ahead and whoops, let's not do that. It's kind of a long URL. But it's a great little insight into how language dampers our emotions and how it really makes it difficult to really express ourselves. And it's funny because writing is how I express myself. Writing is something I'm good at. I'm not that great at drawing or painting, but I love writing. I love doing that. And even so, as I thought about it more and more, I completely agree. There's that there's an adage in writing where people say show don't tell, which is to say that if you're going to express something or put something in, don't explain it, just let it happen. So instead of saying like there was a big explosion and it was very amazing, you like why is it amazing? So show don't tell, you'd say a great ball of fire arises in the sky, heat washes over the world, and whatever. That's the difference between show and telling. Well, all right. I don't know. Do an essay on that. I think that's also part of the reason why school is so not bad, but it's very it kind of dampers because there's that standard. You have to fit the mold, which is a pain. But it's not always, I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not fun. And sometimes it does. Sometimes it cuts off your creative spirit or it reduces your expression. Most people don't make anything great, don't do anything great with their lives until they're out of school. And part of that, I think, is language. And because if you write an essay, you have to cite your sources and you have to articulate. But if you write a story, you can just sort of say it and you don't have to worry about that. And so your ideas have a little more freedom. And that's the difference. But I've been hampering on this for too long. I think I might take a short break. I'm gonna go and stretch my legs and um, well, maybe I shouldn't say that on stream. I'm gonna go do something with my legs. So I'll be back eventually. Don't you go dying on me. Okay, I'm back. Did you miss me? I know you did. Um, Shelby, um, about being afraid to fail, don't. Because there's a saying that sometimes writers like to pass around to make themselves feel smart. Um, they sometimes say nobody is reading your first draft. Because when you write a story, you write your first draft, which is your first attempt, and you kind of go over it and you're like, well, this needs to change or that needs to change. And then from then on, that's the second draft, and then the third draft, and so on. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Because frankly, even if you like my writing, like you're not seeing all the failure that I've had. You're not seeing all the crap that I have put out. You're not seeing all my bad angsty poetry that probably would have gotten in the Slick magazine and uh, the stuff that like if I ever think about it or read about it again, I go over it and I'm like, man, that is really embarrassing. But nobody read it, so it's like, you know what? I don't care. That's why I'm very careful is because I'm like, well, is this good? And if I feel good about it, then I release it. But otherwise, I'm like, nah, no. But don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of like, well, this wasn't very good. Because frankly, if you want to write and you want to write something good, you're gonna fail. It's gonna happen, and that's fine. Everybody fails. Shakespeare failed. J.R.R. Tolkien failed. George R.R. Martin has failed. Every single one of them has tasted failure. The difference is that they persisted and they went on. So don't be afraid of failure. Be afraid of everything else, like spiders. Ah, well, Folio, which is the slick thing, they have a thing. They're like, join the staff of Folio. It's such a weird name. It sounds like polio. Um, I don't know. Sometimes I get invited to that, like in the ward. There's a writers group, and they're like, yeah, we meet every Friday, and I don't have anything against them, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't feel like I fit in with that, to be honest. And maybe that's just me, because I've never actually been. I don't know. Maybe I'd like it. Maybe I wouldn't. But I'm on their website right now for Folio. I think I might submit something. Something I wrote today, or I'm sorry, yesterday and today. I'd kind of told Shelby about it. Spiders don't scare me either, actually. I don't mind them. If I ever see them in my apartment, I don't kill them. I actually saw this one. It looked like a cornflake, and I'd never seen a spider like that. I was like, "Oh, that's great!" And then a little while later, I found it, and he was squished, and I felt bad because I was like, "I'd never seen a spider like that." Let me see. I don't know if I have it. I'm gonna look real quick. I won't spend too much time. Camera uploads. Is it 2016? Yeah, no, I don't have it, so I'm not gonna post it. But is it bad that I feel like uh feel like I'm so much better than everyone else when it comes to writing? Because like I feel like I mean that's kind of a douchey thing to be, but at the same time, like I don't get confident about a lot of things, so I'm like maybe I should just ride that wave. How do I find things that inspire me to write? So, um, when it comes to writing, when I started, I had a hard time. It was difficult to write, and my inspiration was kind of little. Um, the first thing would be to spend a lot of time finding things to inspire you, like pictures. A lot of people get inspired by things like Instagram or Pinterest because there's stuff on there. I would recommend Pinterest more than Instagram personally because I think even though there's a lot more porn on Pinterest, I think the content is generally more interesting. But aside from that, I had a really hard time with inspiration and writing. When I first started writing, I was like, okay, I'm going to be serious about this. Um, it's not it's not about being prideful, it's about being cocky. But at the same time, I'm like, well, all the best artists are cocky and overindulgent, so maybe I'm just one of them, which is me being presumptuous. But I like doing that. Anyways, uh, dang nabbit, what was I saying? So when I originally started writing, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a habit of writing every single day, and I stuck with that, but that was really hard. Like, and I'm not saying like I was writing a whole page a day. I was writing like, uh, if I was lucky, I was writing like a couple sentences, maybe a couple paragraphs, because I just wasn't in the habit of it, and it was hard for me to do that. Um, but I was like, I gotta do this. And then eventually I upped my ante. I was like, okay, 500 words every single day, and that was hard. That was really hard. 500 words, by the way, is like maybe half a page, maybe, maybe a little more, depending on how you format it. Um, and then eventually after that, I was like, okay, 1,000 words a day. That took a while, but eventually I got to that point. And but my point is, I started off where there were a lot of days where it's hard for me to write a single sentence, and now even on my like, I consider a bad day of writing to be like half a page, and not like I don't know. It just takes time. And as far as inspiration goes, write down your ideas, even if they seem a little silly or half baked. Um, the novel that I'm trying to write, I wish I could say I'm writing it, but I'm busy with school. The novel that I'm trying to write, that was originally a story I came up with, and I had no idea. Like, I just came up with a setting. I was just like, well, I like witches, so I'm gonna do this, and I came up with an idea of a witch coven and a couple characters, and it wasn't very good. Um, but I wrote that down, and it was terrible. And then years later, I went back to it, and I started to expound on it. Um, and it went from this thing that was just terrible to being this thing that really became a piece of me and really became big and so much larger than I could have ever anticipated. And it was because I wrote that idea down and saved it. I don't write a lot of my ideas. I mean, I do have notebooks, but I mostly write them on TXT files and save them to my Dropbox, just in Notepad. As far as not having imagination or creativity, Shelby, um, you're only as good as you tell yourself you are. Which sounds pithy, I know, but it's true. If you want to believe that you're not any good, you're not going to be any good. But if you're willing to give yourself a chance and be patient with yourself, you'll be surprised at what you can accomplish. I think ultimately the big thing about writing is that you have to make it important to you. Like these people, I make fun of them and I say they're terrible writers. That's honestly not fair for one thing, and number two, not really true. Because if these silly little poems matter to them, that's all that matters. That's what writing's all about. Everyone else is secondary. Screw everyone else. If you like what you write, you should write it. But and also I'm gonna say, as part of my ego, my presumptuous ego, the bar for entry is really low. Like, I read stories like, I got this book from Comic Con. I'm sure I've mentioned it to you. I don't know if you remember. This guy started his own publishing company, and the book, um, it's not. I haven't read a whole lot of it, but it's not very well edited. I can't speak for the story itself, but it's not very well edited. It almost feels like a first or second draft, or at the very least, like the guy didn't bother getting an editor. And no joke, there are writers out there that churn out like 4 books a year. 4 books a year. They're complete garbage, but they sell. They're self published because they can't get a publisher, but they sell. And just like, I cannot comprehend finishing like 2 chapters in 3 months. There are people writing a whole book in that time. Not because they're good, but because the bar for entry is really low. So don't underestimate your own abilities, because there is somebody worse than you making more money at this stuff than you are. But like I said, you're only as good as you allow yourself to be. And don't think about it. Don't think about it. Seriously. My like that was something that took me a while to get into is I was always trying to control the story. I put both of my hands on it and I sunk my nails into it and I just really tried to make sure that it did everything what I want. But if your story is like your child, that's not how you raise your child. You don't dig into them. You let them go. You let them do their thing, and you will be surprised at what they turn up. Um, so don't think about it. Just write. And yeah, it's gonna suck. It's always gonna suck. But my stuff sucks too. I just don't let anyone see the stuff that sucks. That's why I have entire folders filled with short stories and ideas and all this stuff that is never going to see the light of day because I frankly I don't want to do anything with it and I don't think it's good enough. And that's fine. That's all part of the process. Doesn't bother me one bit. Okay. That's a little more serious than I intended to be, but hopefully that's of use. I kind of hate those pithy remarks. I hate the aphorisms and the little sillinesses of, well, believe in yourself. Uh, just be yourself. Friendship was the real treasure we made along the way. I hate those, but there is truth to them. So don't underestimate yourself. Be patient with yourself and just give it time, you know? And like I said, I was terrible when I started. I had this book that I was on like the third or fourth draft before I finally realized that it wasn't worth it, and I just threw it out. And that took me a long time, to write. But what else am I gonna do? It was terrible. I'm not gonna save it. So hopefully, hopefully that's uh, hopefully that's of some use to you. I do have one other story to read tonight. Um, it was something I wrote. I started to write it yesterday, and I finished it today. It's not at all like Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and it's not really a poem. It's this very strange idea that I had. I felt really good about it. I've never quite felt this way about a story. Or maybe I should say I've never had a story like this that I felt this way about. Um, I don't really even know how to explain it, actually. And I'm not entirely sure what the moral is. It might be a little nihilistic, which isn't my intent, but that's what happens sometimes. It doesn't have a name. In fact, the main character doesn't have a name because I didn't want to write it. Um, but I'm going to read that. Like I said, it's a short story. In my little notebook, my handy dandy notebook, it's 2.5 pages. Um, I'm going to read it though. I met a lord of the fields who, dang nabbit. I met a lord of the fields who inspired dignity in every step. The same could not be said of his son. He was a fool from the first, a reckless and clumsy oaf in all his paths, his every attempt marred by awkward failures, and being a man who never seemed to learn from his mistakes. So it went, from his youth to his prime, even until the old day past glory, when a man grows fat and bald, and what few wits he possesses seem to elude him. He never married, nor sired. Never did he rise in his status. That is, until one day the weight of all life's furies came crashing down upon him. It was not a fierce anger. Instead, it was a careless one. His noble upbringing muting his voice and tone, but for the first time not his words. His great anathema was speaking his mind to the same lord who had raised his family from the dust with a fief. But he was not met with scorn, as he had so become accustomed to. Free from anger, his words were relished. His words were relished by the court, and his tongue loosened to great acclaim, not but once, but for a continuing time, earning him a greater place in certain. In what? Earning him a greater place in certains to entertain lords and ladies throughout the lands. His crowning jewel was the audience of Lady Fairfax, a beauty without a smile, who despised him as much as she despised all uncourtesies. There was no lost derision from her presence, but the common rule of the courts was to listen to his gibes and laughs, and she, unlike him, would not derive from common manner. Yet in time from him and his words she mustered a smile, then two, and in time even the Lady Fairfax did laugh at his remarks without regard for conservative dignity. But know this, he will always be a fool. Though his status is raised, though his pride has flourished, this is all his amount. Though he, unlike all others, is free to speak his mind, and loved all the more for it, he will never bound away from the life he has borne, save until the day his life shall cease. He cannot undo what he is, and he is in all things a fool forever, no matter what he says. I only realized reading that maybe the timing on that is a little bad when you're sitting here talking to me about how you feel like uh, you're afraid of not being good enough. Um, and you don't have to apologize, Shelby. I appreciate your contributions, and I would never not want you to contribute that. I just know that you and Kimmery like to have fun on the stream. And in fact, I think that might be part of what this is about, is this nameless main character. Uh, he raises up in his status, but he's still a fool. Which, as I said, is kind of a bad story to follow up on me giving you advice about not being afraid of failure. Um, I am curious, though. What did you think, Shelby? I know Kimmery's kind of on the out and out. I had thought I'd actually try and submit that to Folio, just out of curiosity. Yeah, I figured she probably was. She's talking to that boy. That boy ain't right. I'm just going to send a text while I wait for the stream to catch up in 50 seconds. Do I ever kind of write myself into my writings? Yeah, absolutely. That's the natural thing. Because the thing is that, like, when you write, when you do anything, you're taking your immediate environment and portraying that. And so, like, sometimes people get mad. They're like, "Oh, Hollywood is like whitewashing," and it's like there might be some racism in it, but a lot of it is just the fact that it's predominantly white. Like, there's a lot of white people there, so when they write a story, they're thinking about white people. When they cast people, most of them are going to be white because that's what the majority of people come. And I'm not going to say that there isn't racism in Hollywood or there isn't whitewashing, but most of the time, that's why. It's just they're not thinking about inclusivity. They're just thinking about, oh, okay, well, here's who's available. And the same goes true with stories, where this is it's a common thing, especially with amateur writers or new writers. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be a red flag. They call it a self-insert character, where like you literally just put yourself into the character. And most writers do it in some form or another. Some people just do it brazenly, where it's like there's no mistake about it that the author is that character. I think Jane Austen did that a lot, where she wrote about her main character would be this lady of great beauty and dignity and grace, and who's just so lovely and amazing, and then she just straight up calls her Jane, and it's like, oh, that's subtle. Um, Sometimes an author will insert themselves as a mouthpiece, where they talk about themselves, like Upton Sinclair in his book The Jungle. He inserted himself into the story, and he's just in there, and he's like, yeah, socialism is great, capitalism sucks, because that was the whole point of the story, at least in his eyes. But self inserts happen a lot. I don't like to insert myself into stories usually. I I usually don't. I prefer to keep uh, somewhat of an arm's reach, some sort of a distance. So there's inspiration, but it's not the same thing. Like I have characters in that book that I'm writing, and one character was based on my grandma originally, but like she's nothing like her. Like even if you knew my grandma, if you were to read the book or this character, you wouldn't necessarily make that connection. It's perfectly natural to insert yourself or others, especially when it comes to genre fiction, where a lot of the times the protagonist is, if not the author themselves, then there's some sort of wish fulfillment of the author, or they're what they call a Mary Sue, which is generally a negative trope. I could go on about that. Maybe that's what I'll do next stream. I'll talk a little bit about writing and um, things like that. If you remind me, I can. But yeah, I was thinking I would like to submit that short story to that folio. I think they might do themes rather than just like, yeah, submit whatever. Like this one is about mourning or whatever. I'm gonna see. Yeah. Well, they um apparently they're I don't know. Apparently they have something going on. I'll try and figure that out. But yeah, we think about it, maybe next time I'll talk a little bit about writing and things like that. Um, in the meantime, I am quite done. I think been streaming for about 2 hours now. Um, appreciate you coming on, Shelby. Appreciate Kimmery coming on. I know that she's not necessarily listening, but that's all right. Appreciate her support anyway. Um, Not really sure what else to say, but I'm just waiting because I see that Shelby is typing a message. Okay, so about the writing process. The only thing about that is, like I've talked about, language is very narrowing. It's very hard to express yourself. Um, and I especially struggle with speaking aloud, which is why I decided to do this sort of podcasting because I'm a very smart person. Um, so it's kind of difficult for me to really explain it, and that's also part of the reason why I don't want to teach writing to people. Not that I mind, but that there's so much to cover and think about and consider, and my mind will like trip over itself, especially when it's a topic as broad as this. But I'm happy to give advice. I'm happy to give pithy remarks and um, oh, what do they call them? Well, point is, I'm happy to oblige you with silliness. Uh, so thanks for coming out tonight, and I guess I will just catch you on the flip side. Good night, and have a good week.